Everybody know. So I'll probably step out like that, so.
Take that long?
I'm hoping.
Yeah, one of them was waking up.
Marty, the whole list for me already.
Hi, Robin, it's Paul. Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Hey there, Paul. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Just promoted you and Shelley to as panelists.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I guess Shelley needs to promote herself when she gets a chance, and then just stay muted until we're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready. At this time, we're going to call to order the meeting, the special meeting of November 13th, 2021. Councilmember Burns, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Roll call, please.
Mayor Velazquez,
Here.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
City Manager Miller,
Here.
City Attorney Epperson. And the record will show Vice Mayor Resendez as absent. Verification of agenda posting. The agenda for the City of Hollister City Council Special Meeting of November 13th, 2021 was posted on the bulletin board on November 9th, 2021 at 4:15 PM for Government Code Section 54956. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to item A1.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. Before I go ahead and introduce our presenters, I want to just first say thank you to Deputy City Clerk Nova for holding down the fort last week, getting out the agendas in spite of agenda management system going down. Thank you to Tracy Horgan from Caliber for helping to get the Matitude going. Thank you to Robin Merrill, Shelley Lapkoff, and Janine Goblet, and a huge thank you to Information Systems and Technology Director Paul De Silva for making sure that everything was up and going. And now I will go ahead and introduce either Robin or Shelley, or both.
Thank you, Christine. I believe the order is that I'll go over the PowerPoint and then Robin will go over the online mapping software. Is that what you would like us to do?
Thank you.
Yes, if you could first, so maybe you can give us the population overall city and then by district, so we can have a mental idea of what those district numbers are looking like currently.
Yeah, you know, they were 40 people more than the last time I talked to you. Not because you grew, but because we found annex properties and a split census block. So it's 40 people more than we had, but I have it in a PowerPoint. And are you suggesting I go right to that screen first?
I just kind of wanted to know those numbers ahead of the meeting, but if you have it in PowerPoint, we can wait for that.
Yeah, they're sort of in order. Shall I share my screen then? I'll do that. Let's see. Second here. Robin, do you have the numbers you could give while I'm getting the PowerPoint up?
And I'll bring that up.
Actually, is my PowerPoint up? Do you all see that?
No, it's not up yet.
It's coming up, I think.
Okay, hold on.
No, we don't see it yet, shall we?
Okay.
We see it now.
Do you see all that? Okay, good, great. So this is the title slide. Is that what you're seeing now? Okay. So here is our first official public hearing number 1. I talked with the city council a couple weeks ago and gave you an orientation, but this is the official public hearing that 1 of 4 that you will need to have during this process. In terms of our qualifications, we've actually been doing this for quite a while, since 1990 census. So this is our 4th round of redistricting. We've helped many jurisdictions, including your own, transition from at-large to by-district elections. And then we helped you redistrict after the 2010 census. And we also are trained as demographers and sociologists as well. So I'll go over what is redistricting, why redistrict, what your current council districts look like, the legal requirements that everyone needs to follow and that we follow, and the schedule, a little bit about the schedule, and then end with communities of interest, because really we'd love to hear from the public and from yourselves about communities of interest. That's an important piece when we start drawing lines. So what is redistricting? Every 10 years, cities must redistrict, which is to adjust their city council districts to make sure that the council district total populations are relatively equal. And we have to use the new census counts. Federal and state laws apply. You have to be done by April 17th, and you're well on your way to do that. The new council districts will be used until after the Census 2030 data are released. And in the event that incumbents no longer live in their council district, they will complete their term of office, regardless of where they live. Now, here are your current council districts. District 1 is very elongated, and that's just because of the shape of your city. And all the others are fairly compact, and we could zoom in if we wanted to see a better view of what your current council districts are. And as you'll see in a moment, 3 and 4 are too small. I believe that's the case, and 1 and 2 are too large. And hopefully when we adjust boundaries, we can also adjust the lines to use better lines and keep communities of interest together if any are split now. So here are some legal requirements we have to follow. There are federal laws. As I mentioned earlier, the council districts have to be equal in population, relatively equal in population. You have some leeway, which I'll go over. There's the Voting Rights Act. Members of protected minority groups must be considered when drawing lines, and I'll show you how we consider them. And there should be no gerrymandering just on the basis of race alone. So you can't have really oddly shaped districts just to maximize the electoral power of some protected groups. And then I'll go over the California Fair Maps Act, which is new and gives very gives strong directives on how this process should proceed. Okay, so let's go to the first federal requirement, which is equality. So here is your size of your city, 41,934 people. Ideally, the council districts would be 1/4 of that, which would be 10,484 people. But you get some leeway and you get a 10% leeway on your ideal district size. So with the ideal district size of 10,484, you have a leeway of 1,048 persons. And what that means is the difference between your smallest and largest district, or the least or most populated district, cannot be more than 1,048 people. Now, here are the population numbers for each of your council districts. And as you can see, districts 1 and 2 are too large. And District 3 is a little smaller than normal, than ideal, but actually it's sort of within the range. But Council District 4 is way too small at 10% below the size it should be. And this gives you a planned deviation of 16.5%, and we are aiming for under 10%. So you must adjust your boundaries. And there's a couple ways we can get that 16.5%. One way is by looking at the percent deviations. So District 4 is minus 10%, and Council District 2 is a plus 6.5%. And we add those deviations, and that gives you the 16.5%. The other way we could do it is look at the difference between the population of Area 2 and Area 4. And that's 1,725 persons. And if you divide that by your ideal population size, you'll also get 16.5%. Okay, there's, as I said earlier, this is 40 people more than what I had shown you earlier a couple weeks ago. Okay, now let's go on to the Federal Voting Rights Act. And this is sort of the exact language. Single member election districts should be drawn so that members of protected groups have the ability to elect representatives of their choice. And you only have to do that if you're in a court of law, if the protected group is sufficiently large, geographically compact, and politically cohesive. But the main thing is that members of protected groups should have the ability to elect representatives of their choice. And I'll show you how we apply that when we're drawing lines. So the main thing is that you should not divide minority populations, protected groups, or overly concentrate them. And this has been cutely named cracking and packing. So the first diagram, the top diagram, is cracking or dividing a minority population. And you can see we're drawing the lines to divide the group. And then that would not allow them to elect a representative of their choice.
Shelley, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt just a second. That's page 13 for anyone following along.
Okay, thank you, Christine. And then there's overly concentrating the population or packing, where you put the minority population together so much that they don't have influence in another district when they could have. So ideally, you would have, in this case, the minority populations would be in 2 districts, and they would have the ability to elect representatives or at least influence the election in districts 1 and 4. So that's practically speaking how we translate the Voting Rights Act. Complicating matters was a Supreme Court case after the 1990 round of redistricting. And the Supreme Court said, after seeing this particular plan from North Carolina, this area 12, this red here, line here, was a district. And what they were trying to do was maximize the African-American population. And this made its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, do not, this is not how you should interpret the Voting Rights Act. Do not go and gerrymander just on the basis of maximizing the ability of that group to elect representatives of its choice. So we're left, demographers are left without much direction about that. We have to take the protected groups into account, but we can't do it too much. We can't gerrymander. We can't make oddly shaped districts, which is sometimes in the eye of the beholder. But clear, this one was clear. And that's why it made it up to the Supreme Court. Okay, so more information than what I'd given you last time. This is information on the race ethnic distribution in your district. And when we're concerned with making sure members of protected minority groups have the ability to elect representatives of their choice or their electoral power, it's a little hard to measure that. So there are 5 measures and they're all imperfect. So I just want to go over these measures with you. So obviously there's the total population that comes from the Census Bureau. And there's the voting age population, again, from the Census Bureau. This is your census count. And these are excellent numbers. I mean, there may be undercounting and overcounting, but they're fabulous numbers from a demographer's perspective. Now, you may remember there was a controversy over putting citizenship question on the census. And this is why it's the 3rd measure, which is citizens of voting age. Citizens of voting age is your key measure of the ability of a group to elect representatives of their choice. But we don't have good data on citizens of voting age. What we have is a very small survey with high error rates and some inconsistencies in the data, because we've worked with this data and it's not great. But it's the best that we have for measuring citizens of voting age, or CVAP is what people call it. And the courts use this. If you go into litigation, the courts will say a group that is 50% CVAP plus 1 person is the official amount that's required to consider a protected group to have the ability to elect representatives of their choice. So it's as important from a legal standpoint, and also when people look at these data, that's what they also look at when they want to make sure that their district is strong enough. They look at the CVAP. The other measures come from the Register of Voters. So we have registered voters and actual voters. And it's the full data. So that's fantastic data that we have the full population of voters. The bad news is that when you go into register to vote, you're not asked what your ethnicity is. So what we what demographers do, and they've been doing for decades, is they take the last names of people and they match it to a list, and they estimate how many have Spanish surnames and how many have Asian surnames. And these can be, the problem is there can be false positives and false negatives, especially for women who, when they marry, often change their last name. So if they've changed to someone with a different ethnicity, then that can often put them in the wrong category. So I just want to give you those caveats on this data, but those are the 5 measures we use to measure the electoral power or influence of a protected group. And as you can see, if you look, for example, at, well, let me just say the total population, you start with 41,934 people. 30,328 were 18 and over, but only 24,808 are actually citizens. So these are the ones eligible to vote. We have another measure, registered voters, 21,349 registered voters. And this is as of the 2020 presidential election. And then in your city, 16,846 voters actually cast ballots in the last election. And what's of note here is the Latino Hispanic measures drop significantly from the total population. While Hollister is 69% Latino, it's 58% CVAP. And when you look at actual voters, 52% of the voters are estimated to be Latino. Your other protected groups would be Blacks and Asians, and they're very small in number. So they would not meet the criteria for the Voting Rights Act, but in the spirit of the Voting Rights Act, if Asians and Blacks were concentrated in particular neighborhoods, you may want to make sure that they're not divided. Okay, and these are the data that we will give you for new plans, and this is the current plan. It's a lot of data here. But it's these 5 measures: the total population, the 18 plus, citizens, registered, and actual voters. And we're going to give you the total population and then these percentages. So you can see how they vary by council district. Okay, so let's say going over to actual voters, you can see that council districts 1 and 2 are highly Latino at 59% and 65%, and 3 and 4 less so at 45 and 41%. And then I just want to mention something. I'm going to get a little nerdy on you about the population. It was very awkward to measure the actual population according to the census in council districts 3 and 4 because there was a split block. So when I showed you numbers earlier, we manually split that block and your deviation was 16.5%. If we don't manually split this block, which we're not going to do for new plans, it would have come out to 17.7%. This doesn't really matter because you're above the deviation that you're allowed. So we're going to have to do new plans. But in these new plans, we're not going to be splitting the census block between council districts 3 and 4. And I have more information in the appendix if anybody's interested, but that's why this number is a little different than what I showed earlier.
Shelley, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt just again. When
Sure.
we didn't have the last slide or any slide, this slide, or probably any additional slides, we only had one. The racial gerrymandering is not permitted for slide 14. So if there's any way we could possibly get that afterwards, I can get that to council.
Oh, I revised the PowerPoint from 3 weeks ago. I wonder if you only have the earlier one. Okay, well, I have some more slides here. Yes, should I keep going then?
Yes, I'm requesting a copy that I can get to council and
Yes.
public should they, okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry that it didn't work out to, that you don't have the actual copy. Okay. This slide is an interesting one. It shows your council districts with the population, the pies, the shape of the pies indicate how large the population is, and the color of the pies indicate the race ethnicity of the people as counted by the census. So the blue areas are Latino or Hispanic origin. Green is the white population. Red, which is really hard to see on here, would be African Americans. Light blue are Asians, and brown all others. But really, it's occasionally you see, here's some Asian populations here in 4, but basically you see a sea of blue and some green. So this gives you an indication of the distribution of the race ethnicity in your city. And these are the 5 measures: total population, voting age, CVAP, registered and actual voters, for just the Hispanic Latino group, because they're the key ones that are large enough to be protected under the Voting Rights Act in your district. So now I'm going to turn to the Fair Maps Act and talk about that. It's a new law, as I said earlier, passed in 2019. It really makes some big changes to how we conduct redistricting efforts. It applies to cities and counties. It does not apply to the smaller groups like school districts or special districts, but it does apply to you because it applies to cities. And it's first to encourage residents to participate in the redistricting process. You need to maintain your website for 10 years. You need to have translation services upon request. You need to have ways for the public to provide testimony and feedback. And you need access to public mapping data and software. And you need to hold at least 4 public hearings. And this is the first of those 4 public hearings. And there's some specific protocols. This meeting, the first one, you cannot have any maps. So I could not present a map, and the city staff or the council members should not be presenting maps, no maps at this hearing. However, the public could present maps if they had them. There should be at least one of these 4 public hearings after 6 p.m. or on a weekend. And so that this public hearing satisfies that requirement. Your meetings should have definite start times. So if you do embed them in part of your city council meeting, you have to stop and start at the particular time that you say you're going to. And then there are noticing requirements, 5 days notice for public hearings, and the adopted plan must be published. That means on your website and available 7 days prior to adoption. So and again, you're in good shape based on our schedule that we've done. It should not be a problem. The other thing the Fair Maps Act does, it says when you draw lines, here's what you should pay attention to. Here are the criteria that should be used when you're drawing the plans and in the order of this. So first and foremost, you have to follow federal laws. And second, things have to be geographically contiguous. So they have to be touching. You can't have an island off. So those are really basic requirements. And then third is that geographic integrity of communities of interest. So communities of interest have risen to the top of the optional requirements. And especially do not split communities of protected groups. Fourth is, doesn't really apply to you because you are a city, but so I'll skip that. 5, easily identifiable and understood boundaries. So the more major streets we can use, the better. Geographic compactness, and your current council districts are pretty compact, and that no political party consideration should be given to the drawing of maps. Now, going on to your schedule, you must finish by April 17th. And right now, your staff has scheduled the following public hearings: December 11th, where we will show draft maps, January 8th and January 18th. And the last Tuesday is at 6:30 p.m. in the evening. So you're well in the spirit of the Fair Maps Act, conducting all your meetings during the times that they recommend doing so the public can participate. You have already, already engaged in an online mapping software, so members of the public can submit plans. That's great. And your city must continue to have their website online for the next 10 years till the next process happens. And then I want to end with communities of interest, because this is where you would like public testimony if people would like to provide that, is to tell us what their communities of interest are. So in particular, that should be within a single council district. So communities of interest that that's also geographically compact. So things like recognized neighborhoods, especially where, say, maybe housing growth might be anticipated, could be a community of interest. But in general, areas with similar living standards, similar income and educational levels, similar race and ethnicity. So we would say to the community, what is your community of interest? And before I end there, I just want to mention that there is an appendix, which you'll get a copy of, where I talk about that, get nerdy about that split block between districts 3 and 4, and also some definitions. But we should really end with, this question: what is your community of interest? And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And I apologize for somehow not making sure our PowerPoint was available to you in advance.
My apologies too. Sorry about that.
All right, at this point, do we have any questions from council members? Go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Shelley, I represent District 4, and so I have a couple of questions that are probably very simple, but I need your comment. So with regard to District 4, we're currently in the process of increasing our communities through future and already approved development. We certainly have some new housing that's going to go in off of Fairview between Sunny Slope and Airline Highway. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to factor that in. I know that right now, as I recall, we're probably on a 5-year completion rate for that housing, and it's significant. So let me start with there, and then I have maybe 2 more follow-up questions, please.
Mm-hmm. So we have to use the official redistricting data, which is from the census and the statewide database as of April 2020. What we could do, if your fellow council members agree, is to make District 4 smaller than the others in anticipation of this housing growth. But you have to stay within that 10% deviation. So maybe make it like -4% deviation, or a -5% deviation, or even a -3% deviation. And hopefully don't make it larger than the ideal council district size.
Thanks. And so I presume that could be done on a formula. Last time I checked, if I understood it correctly, for any typical new single-family residence, isn't it, there's a formula where it's 2.5 or 2.7 persons per household at a minimum?
Well, that's not relevant, actually, because we're not going to take that into account. We have to take the population that we get out of the census. What I'm saying is that when we draw the plans, we can keep District 4 small, a little smaller than the ideal, not a whole lot smaller, because you only have a little bit of leeway. But just keep District 4 a little smaller in anticipation that there will be housing growth and more population there.
Okay, and so is that something as a council we would need to decide on relatively soon, so that it would allow for you to do your work factoring that in, or is it something we would deal with after the fact?
Well, it would be good if your fellow council members agree. I could try and do that. I can't promise that because there are a lot of constraints, but we can try and do that if people want. And I can certainly do at least one plan like that. And the public can also do plans themselves that put 4 slightly smaller than the other council districts.
Oh, okay, and I know that we're not going to talk about maps today specifically, at least from the presentation perspective. But I'm wondering, having spent a lot of time walking District 4, I can tell you, it doesn't feel that small to me, having walked it all. But there were some confusing areas as I try to walk and reach out to prospective residents in District 4 versus other districts. And from my perspective, which is a layman person's and simple, is it really would simply make most sense for a cleanness of redistricting and defining the district would be to simply expand District 4 north of Hillcrest Road over to whatever the street is, I forget, that's Margaret Mays is on, but that neighborhood right there, and then to expand it or readjust the lines west towards Memorial Drive. And I think that would, my sense is, again, a layperson's, but my sense is we're going to have to expand District 4 north and west. And of course, as I understood you say, District 3 was also too small. And so that would, again, have to move those boundaries potentially west and north as well, because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of opportunity to go south, and there certainly is no opportunity to go east. So those are just my initial thoughts and comments. And then final question at this point for the city clerk. I'm sitting here at the dais and I'm looking out and the audience is very sparse. Is there a way for us to, number one, track who may be viewing or will view this in the future from the Zoom meeting, to track those numbers? I think it would be helpful to make sure. I mean, really, one of the reasons this council chose Saturdays was to try and engage our community. And I do know I've seen some noticing go out for this meeting, and I'm a little disappointed, to say the least, by the lack of participation I'm sensing so far. But I do think it's important for us as a council to continue to do these things at our inconvenience for the benefit of the community. And it would be helpful to know those numbers to make sure that we're hitting the target that we're hoping to hit. And so with that, I will be quiet for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I can tell you that CMAP is here recording this so that it will be on channel 17. It's on Facebook, live on YouTube, and Zoom. Is there a way to be able to tell how many hits we get on?
Well, if that's the best we can do, then that's the best we'll do. Thank you.
Could I comment on that?
Go ahead. Nick.
Our experience is that there's more public participation once there's some maps out there. So these pre-map meetings often do not get many people coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Perez, do you have a comment at all? Question?
Yeah, I just, I really don't have much. I'm just kind of interested in seeing how this is going to play out when we must comply with the laws, but there are trade-offs, and it's kind of mixed up for me. So that's it. And yeah, and I know that it was just a slight mishap with all the pages and everything, but me and my ADD, I'm a little all over the place, but I'm following. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Can you please clarify contiguous as far as the lines, boundaries in our city?
Yes.
City, county, county, city, county. Is it, say for an example, the north side of a street is one district and the other southern side is another district, but there's gaps in between heading west or east. Which side would take that? Would it be the district to the south of it or the district to the east of it? How would that work? Because
I wonder if do you mean all those holes in your city?
yeah, we have a lot of holes.
Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
that, I mean,
How
You know,
would
I've just been assuming that we have to take whatever the closest,
the close,
and that would be contiguous.
if one is across the street closer, that would be contiguous. But if one is further to the east, but on the same north side, that would not qualify as contiguous as it gets filled in. Part of the issue we have is, again, some properties were not master planned, so it's there's blocks, island blocks throughout.
Right,
Normally it would be contiguous, but it's not.
right.
Doesn't mean it defaults to the one closest across the street, even though that can create some issues down the road.
Yeah, I think it would default to your, I mean, I'm assuming it would default to your closest, wherever the hole is, whatever would be closest to that. But I guess the question, you could maybe go north, like, let's say you had a hole, you could go up rather than sideways. As long as we go in one direction, we just can't skip over some territory.
Right, that's what makes this kind of odd. The other
Yeah,
the other questions that I had for you are the public participation. I saw a lot of rules here about those can participate, and the restrictions from those that have been involved in campaigns or different things, had run for office. And so can you please clarify that so we're clear? Because we set the ground rules early so the public knows how this works, and we don't have an issue coming down the line.
yeah. I don't think that's an issue because that applied if you had a commission that was going to advise you or be independent and make the decision. So if you had set that up, then there were rules about who could be on that commission.
Great.
But you're doing it yourself, so.
Perfect. Just wanted clarity on that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have. Can we open to the public now?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor. Elia, of course.
You didn't fill out a card? Did you fill out a card today?
I didn't fill out a card yet.
Okay, well, fill it out afterwards. Did you have a question?
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Elia Salinas. I'm disappointed that we didn't have the whole slide given to the public because I think the most important parts were missing, and I would really like to see that, but I know that I'll get a copy of it later. All I ask is when you start going through these maps is that it's not self-serving to you at your current district. If it's going to change a couple of blocks, and those are the blocks that you're familiar with and you walk and you know those neighbors, don't make a decision that you want those blocks back. There's an issue right now that I'm having with the Board of Supervisors is that they came up with and it's, to me, in my opinion, it's self-serving. They literally don't want to change anything. They want it to be. But that is what the census is all about, is because it brings on changes every 10 years. And one of the things that Councilman Burns, you brought up is that it's based on the census and for today, 2020, and not for the population that's going to come in a couple of years when those houses get filled up. You do have a very small, margin. I would definitely want that margin to be included because that is a large population that's going to be coming in, but it's going to take years. And we don't know how many years because also, again, there could be changes in the economy and we could have something that actually stops the growth for a while based on the economy. So if you were to change your margins based on what you think the future is going to be, and we really don't know what the future is going to be based on the economy, you don't want to then have less representation in your district because you anticipated what the future was going to hold on new development. And then I have a concern, and I know that it's legally, it's to protect, certain ethnic groups to have more influence or power or say so. But I also, at the same time, I personally find it a little bit of keeping that group together and not being able to combine them with other people. I think you're able to separate, and I don't want to say that it's racist to keep them together. There's a reason why people have to live in certain, because of socioeconomic reasons they live there. But don't keep a district a certain way just because you want to keep this district. It's so that everybody gets representation and they get themselves involved.
Thank you.
I have no more. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So the next steps is you'll be bringing in some of the maps that you're looking at, or?
My next step, is that, are you asking?
Yes.
Yeah, so we will do at least one draft map, maybe a couple draft maps, and the computer software is up. And so anyone can draw a map. So if people have submitted maps, we will present that also at the next meeting.
Okay. But this is not something the council members could draw maps on.
I think you could, yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think Mr. Burns had made a really good point, and I think what we're seeing in our community, matter of fact, I would like the previous population count from the 2012. But what we're seeing is really growth in some of the newer neighborhoods, and Mr. Burns made a good point, because some of that growth he pointed to, or some of the lines he was talking about, are new homes that are out there, and then there will be more growth in his district, for example. And the same thing's happening in District 1. There's a lot of residential growth going on over there. So it's an interesting industry. I wish you well. But I think actually our city lays out pretty well. I don't see much of an issue as far as the adjustments you're going to be making here. And I'm looking forward to working with you in the near future here.
Good, thank you.
Councilmember Burns has another comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I was hoping that we could have these maps put out. I'll say well in advance, but at least within maybe a week of the next meeting, so that the community has time to digest and reflect on those, and also ample time to submit their renderings as well. And so that would just be a request I would make through the mayor.
A good point. So we have time to really look through it.
So you're asking us to post the agenda at least a week in advance. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So we don't have any other questions or comments. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we close the meeting?
Well, yeah, Robin Merrill is here, and she can give a tutorial on how to use the online mapping software
Oh, that'd be great.
so that you all can play around with it. People can go back and look at her tutorial, even if they're not here now.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. So Robin, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Shelley. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today to provide an overview of the online map drawing tool called Maptitude Maptitude Online Redistricting. And in short, we call it MORE. CalPERS calls it MORE. I'll go over exactly what the demonstration will be, so you have an idea of what to expect. We'll start with how to create an account, because it is an online application. So users using it for the first time will have to create an account. Then I'll go over the overview of MORE, including the tools and where to find them and what they do. And then we'll give a short demo on modifying districts. And then we will go to Q&A, and I hope you have lots of questions. I'll share my screen with you now. Do we have a picture of the? No, we don't.
Yes.
You do see it.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to move it, so hopefully it'll stay in your sight. Do you still see it?
No, we see,
Your son?
No.
You see,
we see your son.
That's Chase. Okay.
we're thinking it's your son, but
Yes, that's my son. He's away at college, so I have to have a picture of him up on my screen. Okay, let me try again because I don't want to stare into my
Maybe
other
you,
screen.
maybe you have to stop sharing and
I'm
reshare.
gonna try again, yes.
Yeah.
So let me get it up first and then hopefully this will work better.
His shirt, that's a nice shirt.
Okay, we see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. There will be a link posted on the City of Hollister's redistricting website that will take you to the online application called More. When you click on the link for the first time, this is, well, every time, this is what you will see. If you're a first-time user, you will need to create an account, and I will go through the process of how that works. So down here in this bottom left white box where it says new user, you want to click on new user. And then you start to fill out this information, your name. You will create a password, and it tells you what the parameters for the password are. You will confirm your password. And then you will type in an email address that you would like to use. And the email address is important because that is how you will accept your own. If you want to email a plan to yourself, that's where it's going to go. And this is the email address that you're providing to the city. Then you will click on the CAPTCHA to say that you're a real person. And then you will create user, click on create user. Now I've already done this, gone through this process. So I'm going to click out of this. And then once you go through that, this is what you will see every time you open up the application. So I'm going to open the application using my credentials. I'm going to log in. And it didn't work. Okay, let's try it again. Second time's a charm. Okay, now I know that I'm into the application now. And like I said, I've played around with this, so I've already got a couple of plans in here. When you log in for the first time, you will not see any plans right here because there won't be any plans created by you. However, there are two plans already in the system. The first one is the current plan, which represents your current council districts. And the second one will be a blank plan if you want to start from scratch. So I want to open, let's say I want to create a new plan. If you create a new plan, this is the two plans that are already automatically in the system, the current plan and the base map. And the base map is just a blank slate, so you can start from scratch. We highly recommend that you start, especially if you're getting started for the first time, to start with the current plan until you get familiar with how the program works. There's a lot to it. It can be overwhelming if you're doing it for the first time, but hang in there with it. It's like any other software program. After you've been in and out of it a couple of times, you'll start to feel familiar with it and everything will go a lot better. So that's what we recommend, is to start with the current plan. And what you want to do is click on current plan and then hit create. And now this is another important feature. If I just click on OK, it's going to open the current plan. But what you want to do is you want to create a copy of the current plan so you can always go back to the current plan as a starting point. So I'm just going to give this a name. I'm going to call it Robin and today's date. And I'm a high believer of using dates So I can go back and say, oh yes, this is my first one, this is my second one. You can say plan 1, plan 2. You can call it anything you like, whatever makes the most sense to you. And I click on OK, and it's going to open your current council districts. Now, I've been on this site several times already. This is what you will see when you open it for the first time. Caliper has embedded in a quick start guide for you to use, and it will be your best friend, especially at the beginning. Anytime that you have a question, oh, I'm stuck, how do I do this? This quick start guide will most likely tell you how to do it. I'd like to say too, at this point, most tools in the application work using a toggle. So for instance, this quick start guide is under the help button. If I click on help, it'll pop up. If I click on help again, it'll go away. So for the first time, you're going to get the quick start guide right away. At the very top of the quick start guide, it goes over how to create an account. But we've already done that. So I'm just going to cursor down a little bit until it gets to part 2. Now, this is the part of the demo where I'm going to go over all of the tools that the application has to offer that will allow you to make modifications to districts. This little, in the quick start guide on the right panel, this little picture here with these red highlighted bubbles explain and demonstrate what the tools do and where you can find them in your big map window here off to the right, left where your map is actually sitting. Before we go through number 1, I'd just like to point out that this dark blue ribbon on the top menu has some additional tools, and I will go over those later because they have to do with tools that you will use after you've already created a map. So the first, number 1, the first red bubble here, shows you this set of tools right here, right on in your map window, and you will use these tools a lot. Another nice feature of this application is if you hover over any of the tools, a little yellow window pops up and tells you what they do. So that's a very nice feature. So for instance, this first one on the left displays the initial map. The second one, the plus sign, you can draw a rectangle. Let's say I want to zoom in on area 2, and it brings me right to area 2. Maybe I want to move the map over a little bit, so I click on the hand to pan, and now I can see more of area 2. If I want to go back to seeing the whole map, I click on the initial display button, and it brings me back to show the whole map. The reason why this map looks not quite centered is because of the quick start guide. So if we were to hide the quick start guide, you'd have a more centered map. But I'll just bring it over here and then open up our quick start guide as we use it. The minus button zooms out, and the I button is like every I button that you've used. It's an information tool. If you click on anywhere on the map within your city limits, it will give you the information of a particular census block. It will tell you what elementary, secondary school that you've clicked on. Any layer in the map, it will give you information about. It will give you the street name, any landmark point, and of course your city limits. So those are the 5 tools that you will use a lot. Number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the tools that you will use to actually modify districts. And I'll go over each one of those. They're in the 4 corners of your map. So display is number 1, districts is number 2. I'm sorry, display is number 2, districts is number 3, redistricting 4, and changes are 5. So let's talk about number 2, the display box. These 4 toolboxes open and close with the 3 horizontal lines on each box, also known as the cheeseburger. Got your top bun, the burger, and the bottom bun. So we click on the cheeseburger to open up the box. This window shows you all the layers in your map. So if you click on layers, it will show you all the layers and which layers are turned on. The map will always default to showing all the layers that are included. And you can tell that by this white check mark in the blue box next to each layer. So let's say you don't want to see elementary, and secondary, and unified school districts because they're just kind of clouding your map. You can turn them off just by clicking on the box. My session has expired. I have not seen that before. Something new every time. Okay, so I've turned off my elementary, secondary, and school districts because I don't need them to show right now, and I can come back later and turn them on if I need to. And I'm done with this layers map window now, so I click on the cheeseburger to make it go away. Now we're going down to tool number 3, which is called districts. And by the way, in your quick start guide, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, it will give you an explanation of all of these tools and what they do and how to use them. So like I said, your help button is going to be your best friend to get this quick start guide opened. If you forget anything and you need to go back and refresh your memory, just follow these red buttons and cursor down. So now we're on the bottom left toolbox, which is the districts box. And what that means is these are your statistics of your current districts. It shows each council district, number 1 through 4. And on the very top here in tiny letters, it tells you how many districts you have, which is 4 in your city. And it will also give you the ideal population that you're shooting for each district. And for city of Hollister, it's 10,484. And it will tell us the total population for each district, the deviation, the percent deviation, and then it also gives you all of the other additional population fields that are included in each district. So we have total population by race, ethnic group, and then we have also the voting age population, 18 plus, total and by race, ethnic group. And then cursoring over, we can see that we have CVAP, which is citizen voting age population by race, ethnic group. And then we've also included some number of registered voters and number of total voters that Shelley went over earlier in her presentation. If you don't, there's a way to make this box a little bit more manageable. If you're only looking at certain population fields, you can click on this, forget what you call it. Anyway, I'll just keep going. There are certain fields that you can hide. So let's say I'm not really interested in seeing the CVAP down. I can click on all of these fields. Oh, I guess you have to do it. Anyway, you can click on all these fields, put them over here to hide them. And then when I close the box, well, it's not letting me do that, is it? It's theoretically going to hide those fields. I'm not sure why that didn't work. This is the filter, is the term that I was looking for. If you just hit your exit button, it'll close out of the filter box. So that's your districts field. That gives you your district statistics. The fourth tool up here on the top right is your redistricting toolbox. This is the toolbox that you will use to actually modify districts, to make changes, to move census blocks from one district to another. You have your target district where you want your blocks to be moved to, and you have your source district where you want your census blocks to be moved from. So if I want to, now we know that Districts 3 and 4 are underpopulated. So I want to move some population from District 3 to District 1. I would click on my source as, I'm sorry, from 1 to 3, I would click on my source as 1 because I want blocks to be taken out of 1, and I want them to go into District 3, so my target is 3. Your selection is blocks, and there are 3 different ways you can select blocks. There's the pointer tool, the circle tool, where you can draw a circle around blocks all at once, and then there's the shape tool. So let's say I want to click on multiple census blocks at one time. I click on my shape tool. Now this is District 1 right here, and I want to put those in 3. So let's say I just want to move these blocks. I click on the area that I want to select those blocks. And when you're back to your starting point, you double click. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. It's very strange. I'm going to log out, if you'll just bear with me for a minute, because I think that the system somehow is tired here, and log back in. And hopefully we won't have that problem again. Okay. Let me just start all over again here with sharing.
You're doing great, Robin. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's just
Wow.
for some reason hanging up here and it doesn't like it. Okay. Let me go back to screen share. Okay, does everybody see the login access window for Maptitude Online?
Yes.
Everything great. Okay, I'm going to log back in.
Well, you could start with your plan that you just had, right?
Yes, but I logged into I just opened up a different map, and it's fine.
Okay.
Any of these
Sure.
maps will work. Do the same thing, open up my quick start guide here. So I put you back to where we were. Now let's see if we can make a change here. That shows you how it actually works. I'm going to move some blocks from 1 to 3. So I already have my sources 1, my target as 3. I'm going to click on draw a shape, and I'm going to click on these blocks here, double click to end it. Now the system is very sensitive. If it touches any of the surrounding blocks, it's going to select those too. So I can either click the X button to start all over again, but it's easier for me to deselect the blocks that I don't want to include. So I'm going to click on the pointer tool. And again, it works like a toggle. So I'm just deselecting the blocks that I don't want to move from 1 to 3. And now I want to move this set of blocks from 1 to 3. I can look down here in my district, in my changes box, your pending changes, and it will tell you before you actually make the change, what your deviation will be if you make that change. So for example, my District 3 will be 2.2%, and my District 1 will be -7%. That is going to make my District 1 too small. So I'm thinking, yeah, I don't want to make that change. So I'm going to clear my selection. Maybe now I need to move instead some blocks from District 2 to District 3. So I'm going to change my source to 2. My target is 3. And I'm just going to click on my pointer tool here and click on a couple of blocks to see down here in my pending changes under percent deviation. I can see that this brings District 3 now to -1.5% and District 2 to 3.8%. And I think, yeah, I kind of like that. Looks like a nice clean line. I'm going to click the check mark to make that happen. And now I have the change made to the districts. So going back, this is why we highly recommend that you always make a copy of a plan so that you don't change your initial plan. You can always go back to that initial plan and start from scratch. There's no limit to how many plans you can make or submit. So it's always great to make a copy of a plan. So those are the 4 big toolboxes in each of the 4 corners of your window that allow you to make changes, modifications to districts, and gives you the information for each district. There are there's a final process that you need to go through when you think that you have the plan that you like. You're happy with your plan. You say, yes, this is the one I would like to submit or print. Before you do that, up here in the blue ribbon, there's a plan integrity tool. And before I do that, I just want to mention that this is included in the quick start guide. So after it goes through all of your tools, down here is verifying and submitting your plan. It walks you through the purpose and how to verify your plan. So basically, the verify plan tool is just telling you whether or not you have a valid plan. There are 2 measures here that it goes through. One is find unassigned areas. And when you click on it, and what that means is it's making sure that you have included every single census block in at least what it is assigned to a district. So you have a complete plan and you're not leaving out any census blocks. So in this particular plan, if you start with the current plan, you will see there are no unassigned areas. So you click on OK. If for some reason you're starting from scratch, you're building your own districts, and you click on your plan integrity, find unassigned areas, and it will show you if you have any unassigned areas, it will give you a list of those blocks and a little magnifying tool that you click on, and it will take you right to there, and it'll highlight that block so that you can assign it to a district. The second plan integrity tool is find non-contiguous areas. Now this is a little tricky with the city of Hollister because you do have 2 areas that are non-contiguous. The first one, if you click on the first line here, it's saying that there are 2 there's 2 in area 1 and 2 in area 2. You really have 1 in each district, but it's showing you the non-contiguous area, and it's saying, here's the other area that it's supposed to go to. So you click on that and you click on your magnifying tool, and it'll take you right to that non-contiguous area. And we know that this is a non-contiguous area of District 2 already. So you're always going to get this report, even though you have no non-contiguous areas. The other one is in District 2. I'm sorry, in District 1. I'm sorry, it's in District 4. There's this little block here that you're probably familiar with. And it is always going to be a non-contiguous block. It has 0 population in it, but it is part of within your city limits. So like I said, every time you do non-contiguous, check your non-contiguous areas, you're going to get this report. It's anything in addition to that. You want to make sure that you don't have any census blocks that, for instance, might be if you're changing a boundary line and you end up with maybe a block right here, I'll just use 3 as an example. if you have a block right here that you somehow ended up assigning to number 1 over here, it's not contiguous, it will tell you that. So those are the 4 main tools on how to modify districts. And then the last thing I want to share with you is if you want to submit your plan to the city, there are 2 ways to do that. You click on the Share Plan dropdown. You can either submit to administrators or email the plan files. And let's go over email plan files first. It is going to ask you, where do you want to email the plan file to? You can email it directly to the city's redistricting email address, which is over here in contact. If you hit contact, you can email the city directly with a message, a question, or you can email your plan to the city directly. So you would type in here, redistricting@hollister.ca.gov. You can type in your any message you want to say. This is my plan. I'm resident, Joe Smith in district, whatever message you want to convey to the city, you can fill in there. And then you're telling it what to add, what geographic files. And the geographic files are what make up your plan. You can click on Esri shapefile, or you can click on Maptitude for Redistricting. Either one will work. And then you click on send, and it will send your plan directly to the city. Now, Paul and I played around yesterday with sharing a plan to submit to administrators. And I'm not sure if that is up and running yet, but when it is, you can type in a message here, and then you fill out all of your information. And I will tell you that we tried this, and all of these blanks here have to be filled in. They're all requirements. And then you click OK, and it goes straight to the City of Hollister's redistricting email site. And basically what that does is the same thing as emailing it. And going back to the email, you can email a plan to yourself if you'd like, or you can share with all users. If you say, this is a great plan, I want everyone on the site to see it, you can share your plan and click OK. And what happens when you do that is when somebody goes to, when you go into open more, you can go to the Share Plan tab, and you can see if anybody has shared a plan. So maybe your neighbor has submitted a plan, and you want to see they've shared a plan. You can open their plan, and you can make a copy of it and adjust the districts for that plan. So that's another way you can start by adjusting districts. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is this really cool reports tab. If you click on reports and click on population summary, it will give you the opportunity to include all of the population statistics that are included. It's those data fields that are included in each block and summarized by district. So let's say I want to see all of these, and I'm going to put them in my selected columns and click OK, and it will give me a report of my plan. So you can see all of the data statistics for each of the 4 districts. And then if you go down to here to what we call percent deviation, total percent deviation, it will say, oh, your plan is at 5.37%. That's another way to get a nice summary of your plan, and you can either download it or print it to PDF or print it out from your printer. And I believe that wraps up the demonstration, and I would love to answer any questions you have.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Byrne?
Thank you, Mayor. Robin, first of all, thank you for the presentation. You did, for the record, state that you hope there are a lot of questions, and so I'm going to fulfill your request.
Thank you.
So, first of all, can you confirm for me that there is no cost to anybody that uses a plan to use the app for Maptitude?
That is correct. Yes, anyone that wants to draw a plan, there's no cost. The application is up and running, or will be. I don't know if it's published yet, but it will be published soon. And if it's not, so yes, the only the users only have to give information. They have to create an account, and then they're ready to go.
Perfect. And so then with the information that they provide to Maptitude to create the account, do you know what is actually done with that personal information?
I believe the information is only stored for purposes of documenting plans. As far as Caliper, I don't know if I understand your question correctly. As far as what Caliper does with the information, or
Well, I actually, what anybody might do with it, you know, sometimes you go to an app and you start using it, and all of a sudden you get all kinds of additional things you didn't really ask for or have interest in. And I'm just curious if we know what the consequence is beyond using the app. And
as far as receiving emails, that unwanted emails, is that what you're asking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, no, Caliper keeps it to purposes of submitting plans to the city only. There will not be any extra emails sent to you no unwanted emails will be sent to you.
Okay.
Excuse me, Councilmember Burns, if I may just add to that too. There is a cost for analyzing submitted maps, of which the council has already approved 20 to be submitted. If we go over that, it's $250 per map, just so you know.
I'm sorry. So so if we go from 20 to 21 submittals, it's how much money
$250
per map thereafter?
It was $250 per map anyway.
Okay.
But council approved at the meeting that we approved, that you let me roll the money over. You approved 20 of them to be submitted. So we are able to do 20 at this time. If we go over, it'll be $250 per map.
So then, is there any kind of a monitoring device? Because if people just go crazy, which I kind of hope they do, honestly, but we want to make sure that it's that they're complete and that it's just not somebody just playing to play with the app. And I could be that guy, incidentally, because I'm going to mess this up more than anybody else.
I don't know, Robin, is there a way, is there criteria?
I think it's a two-part question. The first question is, there's no limit to the number of maps that you can create. And when Christine, you referred to that you have 20 maps that Lapcoff and Gobelay are going to analyze, then we'll know when those 20 are up. So those are the 20 that you're worried about, not the unlimited number of maps that people submit or play around with. It's only the maps that that people submit. I believe Paul and his team can tell on their IT end how many submissions. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but just by listening to other clients' conversations about this, they can go into their server and see how many people have logged in, how many people have submitted a plan, and it's, I believe, tracked by IP address.
Yeah, that you could probably get from Caliper. I could work with them on getting that.
Oh, they're hosting your site. My apologies. Yes.
Right. It's not our internal site. We're
Right.
hosting it with them.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can't tell how many email submissions we get from the public when they get emailed.
Yeah. Okay. Then that would be a question for Caliper then, to ask them, we want to monitor, we'd like to get a report of how many submissions we're getting, how many people are logging in, creating an account. They can tell you that too.
Okay, well, then I would actually ask that we do get that data from Caliber on a regular basis. I won't define or ask, or I don't really know what regular means in that comment, but whether it be once a week, once a month, or whatever, I think it'd be helpful for council to be able to track that data. And again, I hope that we do spend whatever's necessary to get the community's participation, but it would be good to track. I think we have a responsibility to do that as well. So, and Paul, I think you might have just answered this, but when these emails are sent to the redistricting address, are you the guy that monitors this, or who's going to actually physically get this information?
It's going to go to the city clerk's office. They both have the access to the redistricting email. And also, obviously, I obviously have that capability also. So between the three of us. we'll be able to
Okay,
get that
and so that when this information comes in, will there be some sort of a standardized acknowledgement that, dear Tim Burns, thank you for your submittal, we appreciate it, we're gonna move it forward, or this is trash, get rid of it?
That would probably be more. I don't know, Robin, were you getting any acknowledgement that the email was sent on your end when you were doing these testing yesterday?
Yes. Part of them. I don't know if I got all of them, but that's a very good question. It's a little bit different with City of Hollister because Caliper is hosting, and this is the first jurisdiction that we've done this with Caliper hosting. So,
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's something that I can check with Tracy at Caliper too.
Yeah,
Could I add something here? Two things, because all the shared plans will go to the redistricting email address, you, the staff will know how many submissions there are of actual submissions.
Correct.
And then you will send that to us when you're ready to do that. So you'll have a count of how many plans we're doing so far. We're checking for you. And second of all, if you want to do acknowledgement, that you could do an acknowledgement from that email. So perhaps that's what Councilmember Burns is suggesting. When you all get a plan, maybe to send out an email that says, thank you, we received your plan.
Thank you, Shelley. And I have a question to that because that's, we can definitely do. But when a map is submitted, as Councilmember Burns stated, is there a way for us, I mean, are you analyzing every single map that's submitted? Or is there certain criteria that says, okay, this is okay to be analyzed?
Well, we would normally analyze everything that you give to us, but you all could look at it first if you want. If someone feels comfortable seeing, like, is the plan deviation okay?
Right. So we would be looking at it for the same criteria that you gave us to draw a map. So making sure that the populations are even, that they're as a boundary touching to the next one, we would be checking all of that. And if it didn't comply, it wouldn't go to you to be analyzed, correct?
Yeah, you could do that if you're finding that you're swamped with entries.
I actually think that would be a good parameter regardless, and I absolutely think it would be something that staff should look at as opposed to council, because obviously we could be perceived as having an interest, which we may or may not. And so to have an independent set of eyes on it that understand the technology, I think would be very helpful. Okay, moving right along. So when I saw the demonstration, I saw where it talked about when you move blocks, that it would show a percentage of the change. Will that actually also, I couldn't see it from my perspective on the dais, but will that also show the number of actual residents or registered voters that are in that block?
Yes, you can cursor down and see all of the fields, and it'll tell you, it'll give you the data statistics for every data field.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think
Total
that
pop, CVAP, voters, yes. And another thing I'd like to mention, because I forgot to do so earlier, the total population, the label in each block is the total population that that is showing so that you can see if you're zoomed in and you're making changes to a district, you can see the total population for each block.
And Member Burns, I don't know if you turn around, if you might be able to see that better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, and I'm about to wrap up, I promise. I guess my last two questions and maybe a comment in relation to this process is, have we, I know that we've scheduled public meetings to discuss this at the formal level, but have we given any consideration to maybe hosting a workshop where people such as myself are technology challenged and could be helpful to actually provide people with hands-on? I know I've learned a lot of computer programs in my my older part of my life, but it was through a lot of trial and error, and it was through a lot of commitment and help from others that I was able to actually accomplish my intended goal. And then my final question is there a process whereby potentially some people don't have access to the internet, they don't have access to a computer? Have we considered provisions for people that might have that challenge as well? And that will complete my questions and comments. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Did you want to go ahead and answer those questions?
Shelley, I think there is a paper process to do as well, but again, we don't have computers here for the public to use. Part of this being CMAP'd and being recorded is because Robin took the time to go over exactly how to do it. This would kind of be the video that you would go to once you're on your computer, and you can rewatch it and it will walk you through it. But I know that there's also a way for people who don't have a computer to use a paper process. And Shelley, I don't know if you could maybe explain a little bit more on that.
For some clients, we have done that. We have set up paper, what we call pieces. We break the city into pieces, where we think people might be interested in moving around pieces. It would still require a computer, though we could also have it printed out on a map, and people could sort of draw on the map what they wanted. That was not an election that you all chose, because that was an additional fee, and you chose the online software. But if you wanted to do that, there'd be an additional fee for us to do a paper map with pieces on it, where people move around those pieces, which actually people use that, our experience, more than they use the mapping software. But your city is so small that the mapping software might work as long as people are willing to invest the time in learning the software. But if we can do that for you, the paper pieces kit, if you like, but it's for an additional fee.
I'd actually like to explore that as an alternative as well. And then I guess my final thought, actually, I've extended beyond, but it seems to me that there are computers at the community center that could be used for this process potentially. And so I'll just throw that out to the city manager and staff to consider that as well. I, for one, am much more of a physical guy. I want to be able to see it, touch it, smell it, play with it, move it around. And I like the pieces idea very much for somebody of my age with my lack of sophistication. So thank you.
There's also the library. They can use computers there. So, and I think you're right. If they go back, spend the time watching the video, like all of us, we're going to have some time to learn this, or take some time to learn this so we can do it right. And I think that's very important, because I don't think what we want is somebody is to show up and say, oh, I just want this for whatever reason, but to really spend the time and understand how this really works, and not just my neighbor lives over here, I want them in that district because they're my friend or something. We want to make sure this is really making sense for the entire community. As you mentioned, it's a small city, and just spending the time here today, understanding the numbers. I think Mr. Burns, you said it right from the very beginning. I think you were correct on the northern part of the boundary that you were talking about. And I think we can all, as we know our district, as you mentioned too, you walk your district, you know that pretty well. Mr. Perez knows his district and what really makes the most sense. And I think we can get to that point I think relatively quickly and easy. So I just want to say thank you to you all for taking the time this morning to go through this with us. Any
Yeah.
other question, comments? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, I just want to make a comment. Thank you for your presentation. I also think that, you know what, I don't think our numbers are way off. I don't anticipate this being a long drawn out thing. I think simple is best. But I wanted to thank you again and thank all the public for coming in on your Saturday. That's it.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to bring to our attention before we adjourn the meeting?
One thing it's very important and I forgot to share it with you. So I'm just going to share my screen and open the application one more time. Can you see the application?
Yes.
There's a way to change it from English to Spanish. The guide comes in Spanish as well. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. It's very important that it comes in several different languages, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Chinese as well.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, I have one
Go ahead.
speaker who would like to speak.
I'm sorry,
Ellie
but
would
we
like
already
to
closed the
speak.
public comment. We went through that already.
She didn't realize that the map portion would be split into two.
Split what in two? I'm sorry.
Well, the presentation was split in two, so I spoke.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So my only question with regards to the software, so that a lot of people don't submit, if the numbers are off, like someone's just joking around, not that but let's say that is there a way that you cannot submit that the program will not accept it as a map for submission, so that someone is not just playing games and just, playing a puzzle out there? That's just my question. If the software, so that way, I understand we only have 20, but is there a way for the software to stop from people submitting something that would just not be acceptable either way on the program? So there isn't. Okay. Because if there's only 20 and it's 250 for how many more then? Because we did this with the county did this, and people were playing with the maps and out at the county fair. And so I think it's a great idea. I was thinking about also the community center. You could have a workshop at the community center. I think there's 10 computers out there available. Like the mayor said, there's also going to the library. But if you wanted to do a workshop, the community center would be the place to go, because you can actually have a large volume of people, and then they would just have to wait around to, you could have a class in the community center and then have 10 people at a time go in and try to play with the program there themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. No one else.
No one else. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Robin.